You probably have heard that this Nazi thug named Tom Homan, who is one of the leaders of and organizers for the Toilet Rats mass deportation campaign, he has now said that the governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers, could be arrested for issuing guidance about how to avoid being busted by these fucking thugs who operate for this monster Tom Homan. So over the weekend, a coalition of advocacy organizations expressed support for the governor. And this is reported by Common Dreams, and these organizations warned that Trump's goon, Homan, is a threat against the Democratic leader, the governor, and that threat marks, quote, a dangerous escalation of this administration's assault on the rule of law across the United States. And again, this is one more thing. We better pay attention to this. The arrest of a judge last week, was that just last week? A district court judge was arrested. And you know the story. But this warning from these groups, including one group is called All Voting is Local. The other group is the American Civil Liberties Union in Wisconsin. They issued a joint statement that the governor's guidance to state officials on how to handle being confronted by federal agents was, quote, a prudent measure aimed at ensuring compliance with state and federal laws while protecting the rights of state employees. And on hearing about that, this Nazi fucking goon, this monstrous-looking Tom Homan, who just absolutely looks out like he was straight out of some goddamn Hollywood flick about a Nazi camp guard, overseer, director, whatever. But now Homan says that, well, if he could be arrested for issuing these guidelines because the guidelines, and here's a direct quote, the guidelines undermine the foundational principles of our democracy, including the separation of powers, the rule of law. And then in a joint statement from these human rights groups, they sort of picked up on the same thing, the same bullshit that was popping out of the Homan Nazi's mouth, and they added that the rule of law and the right of state governments to operate without undue federal interference is now under threat. And the ACLU of Wisconsin added this, quote, to threaten our governor over his legal directive is gross overreach by our federal government, and it is not occurring in a vacuum. End quote. And then the ACLU added a warning that the Trump administration's rhetoric and actions represent, quote, a chilling attempt to normalize fascism, end quote. Now, I can remember it was not that long ago when I'm not trying to blow my own horn here. I'm just saying that over a period of years, when I could see this coming, and it seems to me millions of people who are interested in civil rights and human rights could see it coming too. I don't know how many of them had a microphone where they could get the word out. But I talked about this over and fucking over again until I was just absolutely out of words, out of outrage. Fascism is coming. It is arriving. And now here it is. And then during the campaign last year, when voice after voice, former employees of this toilet rat, people who had to work in his administration in order to keep the country from tilting into fascism, the first go around with this son of a bitch, business leaders, military leaders, economists, university heads, everybody in a position of power, it seemed like, in this country, with the exception of these Christian terrorists, were warning This is going to happen unless we do not let this son of a bitch back into office. And millions of Americans, dumb fucks that we are, just turned away and said, well, I don't give a shit about that. I'm sick of hearing all this. The ACLU and the All Voting is Local group, when they issued their statement, they said this also, quote, similar occurrences are happening across the nation, including within our academic systems. If we do not reject these actions now, states and other institutions will only lose more and more of their autonomy and power. This is exactly why we underscore Governor Evers' claim that this event is chilling. End quote. It's about the accumulation of power. That's what all of this is about. Consolidating this Trump dictatorship. From Vladimir Lenin, quote, dictatorship means nothing more nor less than authority untrammeled by any laws, absolutely unrestricted by any rules whatever, and based directly on force. The term dictatorship has no other meaning but this. End quote. And I wonder how many times people who are much more well-versed in this shit than you and I are go on television, on a talk show someplace, and talk about, this is happening now. We are in this moment. We have to do something. It's chilling. It's this. It's that. Constitutional crisis, blah, blah, blah. And nothing, not a fucking thing is being done in the power centers that could do something. That's why we have got to turn out by the millions, I would say the tens of millions, on June 14th to let this Nazi fucker Donald Trump understand that his brand of narcissistic control is not going to come to this country. We've got to do this. Now, officials of the toilet rat said the president himself has repeatedly threatened state and local officials. Well, let me change that. Trump officials and the toilet rat have repeatedly threatened state and local officials as this fascist government continues. It rushes ahead with its lawless mass deportation campaign, which already, and this is not being reported to the extent that it should. Tens of thousands of undocumented immigrants and at least over a dozen U.S. citizens, including children, have already been snatched up and deported. And in one of his filthy, goddamn, unconstitutional executive orders that he signed last month, the toilet rat accused, quote, some state and local officials of engaging in a lawless insurrection against the federal government by refusing to cooperate with our legal deportation orders. Jesus Christ. Temple University law professor named Jennifer Lee recently said that localities, quote, can legally decide not to cooperate with federal immigration enforcement, end quote. She added this, quote, cities, like states, have constitutional protection against being forced to administer or enforce federal programs. The Trump administration cannot force any state or local official to assist in enforcing federal immigration law, end quote. Well, maybe not in the final outcome, but what these murderous fuckers in the Trump administration can do is arrest a judge or more judges, or threaten to arrest and probably follow through at some point the governor of a state, to threaten state legislators to file lawsuits that then the victims of these lawsuits, state and local governments, have to defend themselves or lose by default. And it's not just local stuff. The toilet rat officials have also leveled threats against members of Congress. And earlier this year, this fucking monster Nazi, Tom Homan, who heads ICE, said that he would refer Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to the U.S. Justice Department because she was holding a webinar informing constituents of their rights. And during a town hall this past Friday, Ocasio-Cortez dared this Nazi fucker Tom Homan to do just that. She said to cheers from the audience, quote, "To that I say, come for me. We need to challenge them. So don't let them intimidate you." End quote. You're goddamn right. That's part of the force of fascism is the intimidation factor, especially when it starts to occur in what had previously been a democracy. Limited or a full democracy. When all of a sudden the threats start pouring out of the mouths of these Nazi son of a bitches, it's very difficult for, well, us Americans to believe this could really happen. What can they do? No, they can't do this. I mean, I've been in the United States all my life, and so have my parents and grandparents. This kind of shit's illegal. Oh, this is just hysterical shit put out there by the press. Never mind, let's go bowling or whatever. And that is so dangerous to slip into that mindset that, no, this can't happen here. I mean, how many books and articles and references to that point have been written? Well, it can't happen here. Well, it's happening and I hate this phrase, in real time, right in front of us. Every time I hear that in real time, I think, what the fuck is unreal time? I mean, time is time. Jesus. So, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers hit back Friday on this filthy pig Homan's suggestion that that Evers could be arrested for distributing guidance to state employees on what to do if confronted by these fucking fascist Stasi secret police of Trump's. And the guidance, by the way, is straightforward. It's unremarkable. It instructs state employees, quote, stay calm, ask federal agents for their name and badge, contact an attorney, decline to answer questions or provide agents access to any documents without a lawyer present. And this was added. State employees may not grant ICE or another agent access to any such data or information absent authorization from their legal counsel pursuant to a valid judicial warrant. And for that, for issuing those guidelines, this gruesome son of a bitch, Tom Homan, is threatening the governor of Wisconsin with arrest. But these people, Homan among them, and this crazy bitch who now runs the Justice Department, this little shit who stands as press representative, and Trump himself and the rest of these slime, they don't believe a warrant is needed for anything. The warrant is what tumbles out of the rat asshole Trump's mouth. There's your warrant. Because he's the king. He's Christ, God, Jesus, Lord Donald Trump in his fevered brain. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.